Welcome to Inside Bio IT. I'm Cindy Crowninshield of the Bio IT World Conference and Expo, where science and technology converge to advance precision medicine. Today I'm speaking with Ted Slater, who is the Global Head of Knowledge Engineering and Data Advisory at EPAM Systems. Welcome, Ted, and great to have you here.
Thanks very much. I'm happy to be here.
So you've been part of the bio IT community since the early 2000s, and when you look back at where the industry was then versus today, what stands out most to you about how the field has evolved?
I think the thing that stands out most for me over all these years is a very, very slow roll from architecture towards data. And that comes from historical reasons. In the kind of mid 90s, we first started putting computers on people's desks, and people got used to working with data in that way. And we realized we had more data than would fit on people's desks. So we had to come up with architectures that were a little bit more robust and those kinds of things. And over the years, we made that better by doing things in the cloud and all those kinds of things that help. But always the focus as we started thinking about precision medicine and how we could use data to help patients in better ways, better and better over the years, we just started focusing more towards data and how are we going to get data back out after we spent all that time putting it back in. So for me, that's been really fun to see in the conference. We've kind of gone down a couple of roads that were really interesting. Like AI has popped up a couple of times over the years. This time it's going to stick. So that's very exciting. The cloud was a big development, etc. So yeah, that's been the most interesting part for me is to see that focus go from where are we going to put this stuff to how are we going to use this stuff. I think BioIT as a conference has really helped people figure that out.
Certainly the conference has evolved over the years in helping people realize that for sure.
Yeah.
And in parallel to that, your career has grown as well, and it's evolved alongside many of those shifts in digital transformation, data, and AI. And I'm curious what has been some of the biggest inflection points in your journey, and how did they shape the work that you're doing today at EPAM?
Yeah, it's a good question. So, you know that I started my whole academic career in molecular biology. So that was
Yep.
the first thing I did. And then we talked about computers showing up on people's desks. That's what happened to me when I was in grad school for molecular biology. So I went back to grad school for computer science. And that landed me right in the middle of where bio IT is. And so that was really a fun thing for me. Very early on, semantic web was really attractive to me because of the complexity of the kinds of information that we have to use in pursuit of precision medicine and all the attendant things to that bio IT has helped everybody along with, to be honest. So semantic web was a big thing. Um, Big data was also pretty key. Life sciences has enormous amounts of data and it's very complex. As a discipline, life sciences don't necessarily have the biggest data in the world, but we certainly have the most complex data. So that's been a real challenge. And so tackling that was a really big inflection point for me. That got me involved in things like Cray, for example, the supercomputer company. So working with really big knowledge graphs and things like that. The
Yep.
cloud was an interesting development. So that changed the way people work with hardware, for example. Your computer didn't necessarily have to be your own at some point, which is pretty handy. And then, of course, probably the biggest inflection point was fair data. And so getting involved with the Fairport meeting that Barnes Mons had way back in 2014, I'm going to say, in Leiden. That was really that was really key. And of course, that theme got picked up by BioIT in a big way. That's been really helpful, not only for me, but for a lot of people. So
Yep.
that's been really good. That was the biggest one for me. And yeah, you'll notice that kind of mirrors the trajectory from sort of architecture-based things up to more data data-centric things in the recent past. So that's good. I think the data part's just going to get bigger. And that's been fun for me. Yeah, it's nice to see that kind of mirroring.
And how does that reflect in what you do for EPAM and the work that you're involved in?
Yeah, so EPAM is a big company of very talented software engineers. We've made our own pivots, right? So AI, for example, has made a big dent in what we do at EPAM, and we've certainly tackled that in a big way. And what I am really happy to see these days is the really close relationship between data and especially things like fair data, where semantics are preserved in that data, and AI and the ability of fair data to help AI, I'm going to say understand, but I'm going to say it in prominent air quotes,
Hmm.
to understand that kind of data and help us really get a lot of work done that would have taken us much more time before. So
Hmm.
that's been fantastic. Yeah.
And a lot of people are still talking about AI. They're talking about automation, digital transformation in theory, but your work
Yeah,
like focuses on actually operationalizing these systems
for
in real
sure.
organizations, right? So where do
Yep.
you think companies are struggling the most right now from your
That's a
viewpoint?
good, yeah, that's a good question. Your point about um, people trying to figure out what to do with some of this stuff is really important. I think fair data has made a big impression on people and the things that they do, but fair data requires a little bit of effort to figure out.
Mhm.
Um, and especially when it comes to combining that with AI and then trying to do something in the real world that makes an impact on people. That's been a struggle for everyone. Um, in different ways. But the common theme is, and I'm going to hopefully be able to address this point later on, but deep expertise is a thing that people need to concern themselves with, right? Like you have to know what AI is, and you have to know what fair data is to make sure that you can work with those things efficiently. So one of the things that's really nice to see, especially in places like BioIT, is vendors, for example, who reduce this stuff to practice. EPAM does this every day, and other vendors do it too. Um, how do you use your expertise to put systems together in a way that takes advantage of the really powerful aspects of technology today and does not get bogged down in the things that are that are not as easy to work with or maybe don't work as well as you wish they did, um, to really get some things done. That's really important to do. It's
Mhm.
been a real kind of soapbox of mine to get up on for a while, which is there's no point in doing a lot of the things that you think about doing if you're not going to be practical about it and really get something out there in the real world that people can use to create value. So that's what it's about.
I concur with that, and hopefully attendees coming to BioIT next week will also feel the same and walk away with as much learnings and value that they can glean. And speaking of
Yeah.
which, you're participating next week at BioIT in many different ways. You're chairing a session, you're engaging with the community. What keeps you bringing back, what keeps bringing you back to BioIT year after year?
Well, that's an easy one. It's the people who are there really. Um, some in a lot of cases, the one time a year I get to see people is there at BioIT. There are some other conferences that are a little bit more niche, I guess is the way to put it, for some of the things that I do, and I see some people there. But honestly, BioIT is the small town that everybody wants to visit every year and talk to people. So for me. A big part of the reason why I go back every year is to talk to people, find out what they've been doing, find out what they've learned, and learn some things myself. That's really fun. The thing about reducing things to practice and seeing what vendors are doing is also really important to me. So I think that is where people are no longer trying to do experimentation or whatever it is. They're like really able to deploy something somewhere and get work done. So it's important for everybody to see that. So that's another reason why I come. But really, it's people.
I've heard that BioIT is a reunion of some sorts, like a family reunion.
Yep,
That's
old
what I
home
thought.
week. You're right. Yeah, it's the best.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's one thing that's really great about it is you try to walk through the exhibit hall, for example, and you can't go 10 feet without seeing someone and pausing and talking with them, and it's fantastic to see them. And again, you can read all the papers that you want, or you can look at LinkedIn or whatever it is, but you're never going to get the conversations that you get unless you're at BioIT talking to people. So it's really important.
Mm. Well, thank you for sharing that. And looking
Yeah,
ahead, as someone who's watched the industry evolve over 25 years, can you believe that? What trends
not
or
really.
shifts? I know, yeah, right. What trends or shifts do you think will define like the next era of life sciences and digital R&D? Like we're looking ahead at what BioIT 50th annual will be like, right? So
Yeah,
what's going to happen between now and then?
it's such
What
an
do you think?
interesting question. I mean, things change so fast these days, it's really hard to keep up with it. But I do think that, kind of despite some of the trends that you see right now with respect to AI, for example, this is the point I wanted to make earlier, which is I think deep expertise is just going to get more and more important. So,
Mm,
um, what I mean by that is, again, if you don't know, for example, how large language models work and what their limitations are, what they're good for and what they're not good for, that is going to turn out to be very expensive, right? So
right.
um, that kind of thing I think is really critical. Um, One of the things that is interesting after 10 years of fair data is the kind of shallowness of understanding that people have with respect to that sometimes, which hinders us actually from making our data findable and accessible and interoperable so it can be reusable. It's super important in the context of AI. Like if you don't understand your data, your AI is not going to understand your data either.
Right.
So yeah, so that's I think the expertise required to use AI and things like that effectively in a practical way is going to be the most important thing. So this kind of leads me back to BioIT. You learn more about that stuff talking to people than you do any other way. So I think it's super critical.
Well, thank you for sharing your thoughts, and we look forward to seeing you next week on site at BioIT. We appreciate you being here. And what you shared with us is the exact kind of thinking that we're bringing to our community. And I want to thank you, the viewers, for watching this video inside BioIT, where we're highlighting the leader shaping the next era of precision medicine. So I'm Cindy Crowninshield, and we'll see you at BioIT.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.